Good evening. We're going to call this special meeting to order. It is 5:01 on July 30th, 2019, and this is a special meeting agenda for the public hearing to adopt a tentative 2019-2020 budget and millage rates. At this time, will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yes. Okay, so at this time, we are going to adopt the orders of the day. Are there any items that board members wish to move from consent to action? No?
No, ma'am.
Okay. I need a motion.
Move approval. Second.
Mrs. Justice and then Dr. Schiff. Any discussion?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
4-0. We are at the portion of for our citizen input. We have one citizen input, and Mrs. Wall, could you please join us?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, Dr. Moxley and school board members. My name is Claudia Wall. The district's compiled academic performance data simply cannot be trusted. Our school district continues to spread disinformation with its compiled academic performance data. Significant errors go unchecked every year. The board cannot properly understand how our schools are actually performing when the district's curriculum instruction department continues to provide data that is false and inaccurate. This is not the first time I'm at the podium about the issue. Last January, I brought this to your attention that the district's academic performance fact sheet showed inflated English language arts test scores. I provided the board with the state's data and outlined the areas of discrepancy. Mrs. Berenberg was caught off guard with the district's misleading data, stating, "So it's all right then that we put out wrong numbers?" I also previously provided the board documentation as evidence that the Curriculum and Instruction Department has a pattern of producing biased, inaccurate reports every year. Dr. Moxley has every reason to believe that she is presenting the board what is accurate and what the board can trust. In normal situations, one might not have to expect the board to scrutinize. These are not normal times for our district, requiring extra vigilance. The Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction is responsible for compiling and interpreting accurate data in order to provide valid conclusions regarding the district's assessment program to all stakeholders. But that is not happening. There is a chain of command problem in the department that is severely damaged, coupled with its chronic employee turnover issues. We have no idea where the system accountability is breaking down to put out information accurately to the public and the board that can be trusted. They cannot put forth accurate, reliable information. The board was misinformed once again last week at the July 23rd superintendent workshop on the FSA scores. The percentage level 1 data is false for the FSA math, for all grade levels for both race equal to white and race equal to black. Additionally, the report completely omits percentage level 2 below satisfactory data and falsely claims level 3 is proficient, when the state clearly defines proficiency as level 4 and above. As a member of this community, I have a right to expect answers to the following questions. I challenge at least one of you to bring this issue forth at one of your board discussion meetings so that it allows the public to hear your response. 1, what actions have been taken to address this issue? 2, what are the various verification processes relied upon to validate the information presented to the public? And 3, where is the commitment to producing excellent work? You expect it from students. Why not expect it from staff? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Swark, if I could for a moment, I'd like to apologize to Mrs. Wall. I normally turn my cell phone off, and unfortunately my daughter called I apologize that my cell phone went off in the middle of your speaking.
Did, Dr. Moxley, can you have someone look into this and
Yes,
get back with us?
I would need to review the information she submitted.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, so I only had one citizen input tonight. Thank you, Mrs. Wall. At this time, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move approval?
Mrs. Justice,
No, ma'am, no comment, thank you.
Mrs. Rosario, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
4-0. Okay, at this time, we're going to move on to our action agenda. A, public hearing for adoption of revised school board bylaw. Dr. Moxley?
Yes, members of the board, on June 25th, 2019, the board moved approval to set a public hearing date to adopt a revised bylaw to be consistent with present practice. This policy change process was followed in accordance with Florida statutes under the Florida Administrative Procedures Act regarding Chapter 12 rulemaking and Board Bylaw 131. The proposed bylaw is in your board packet, and this is being recommended for approval.
Okay. This item deals with adoption of revised school board bylaw. Dr. Moxley, have you documented that this public hearing was properly advertised in accordance with state statutes?
Yes, it has been.
Okay. We now recess this meeting to conduct the public hearing as advertised. The public hearing is now in session. Dr. Moxley, are there any written responses to the advertised public hearing to be read at this time?
We have not received any written responses regarding this bylaw.
The public is invited to address this issue at this time. Is there an individual representing an organization or his or her own personal or public interest who wishes to speak? The chair concludes that the announced public hearing on the adoption of the new and revised district school board policies has been conducted pursuant to notice, and the ample opportunity to address this issue has been provided to all. The board meeting is reconvened at this time. I call for a motion.
Move approval.
Mrs. Justice with the motion, and then Dr. Schiff with a second. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I would, Mrs. Zork, thank you so much. I'm happy to see that we make these changes for clarification for the citizen input and public participation at board meetings. I welcome public participation, as many speakers have said before, and as a parent who has used the citizen input portion of our meetings to be able to express my concerns or thoughts to school board members, I welcome the public's input. I would humbly ask the chair that we adhere to this policy, and that when we say 3 minutes, we mean 3 minutes, and that we do not allow for any additional speaking before the 3 minutes or after the 3 minutes. We have a 3-minute allotment of time. I feel it's fair that it be consistent across the board for each person who gets up to speak. I'm happy to be able to pass this tonight and adhere to all of the board policies as they stand.
Okay. Would you like to speak? No. Mrs. Rosario?
I would just remind the chair, as a follow-up to that conversation, that there is a provision in that policy that states the chair has the discretion to extend time at your, it is at your discretion for anyone. There is no distinction as to who should get it and who shouldn't. So at any point in time in which you feel, as you are chairing the meeting for this particular topic that we're talking about, I would support when you feel the discretion to allow someone to go over the 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, by all means, I plan on following the board policy on this, and it does state in A3, the time period may be extended by the presiding officer, and I will use that very sparingly as needed. So, any further discussion on this? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
4-0. Okay. So we're going to move on to the purpose of the public hearing. Dr. Moxley?
Yes, good evening, board members. First item tonight, we will adopt tentative millage rates, and then we will adopt a tentative budget for the 2019-2020 school year after receiving public input as required in this public hearing. The truth in millage, which is our trim advertisements, they have been placed according to the specifications of law. Trim requires that proposed taxes, which are commonly referred to as millage rates, be the first issue we discuss and adopt at this public hearing. The board will make 2 separate motions this evening before completing this final public hearing on adopting our tentative budget and millage rates. The first one will be to set all tentative millage rates. The second motion will be to adopt the tentative budget. Major issues on taxes will be reviewed and followed by input from the public prior to board motions. So at this time, I'd like to start the discussion of the millage rates by asking our Chief Financial Officer to come forward, Mr. Fagan, and talk to you a little bit about the millage rates. Yes, please.
Thank you. It's nice having you here. It's not as,
Match my shoes.
you're
I
not as
know. You don't
fancy.
match- That's all right.
I'll have to hang out with him a little bit more.
I like the red tie, sharp.
Thank you. All right. Okay. Good evening, board. To the chair, to the board, to the superintendent. Get a little bit closer. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to you about the 2019-2020 budget. Before we get started, there's a couple of corrections in the attachments. I'd like to pass those out first, but we're not going to talk about them first. I'm going to go through some other stuff first.
Thank you.
Top of the page, you will see the page numbers with the corrections.
Thank you, sir.
It's only one page. It had nothing to do with the advertisements. It only had to do with the typo.
Can you wait until we get to the speaker? Wait.
The corrections were simply a typo in the documentation and had nothing to do with the advertisements.
Okay.
To let you know what the corrections were, is in the documentation, it said the millage rates were 3.851. They actually were 3.821. Okay? Before we go on to this, I'd like to go over some highlights, and then we'll come back to this page. We're here tonight to approve the tentative millage rates and the tentative budget for 2019-20. This is the first of 2 required meetings. The second and final meeting is scheduled for July 30th, 2019. These meetings were advertised in the Vero Beach Press Journal on Friday, July 26, 2019. My understanding, they were correct this time as compared to last year. These approvals are required to be in compliance with Florida Department of Revenue. TRIM, as Dr. Moxley stated, stands for Truth in Millage. The millages we are proposing tonight as a tentative is 6.5690. If you look at your handout on page 7 of page 85, you'll see a little chart. Last year's rates were 6.7930. Therefore, this is a reduction of 2.240 millage rates.
I'm sorry,
I'm
can
sorry.
can you repeat what page?
Oh, 7 of 85.
You would be on 11 of 101 in the.
or 11 of 101.
Yep.
11 of 101.
101.
If you have the bound book, it's 11.
And I'm sorry, can you repeat that number that you just?
Eleven of 101, if you have the book.
If it's in the spiral bound book.
If it's in your attachment to the agenda, it's in two places. 7 of 85 is your first one.
You have the book?
The book is right here.
Okay,
So,
okay. Just,
thank you.
just making sure.
Yes,
All right.
thank you.
Current year rate for 1920 is 6.5690. Last year, 6.7930. So that's a reduction of 2.240 mils, or 3.3%. This reduction is due to a decrease in the required local effort as stated by the Florida Department of Revenue. We don't control this rate. Okay? The district is levying the required allowable rate. We're not levying any more or less other than our .5 discretionary millage. The district is required to levy this. Failure to levy this will subject the district to a loss of approximately $46 million in state grants, which is your FEFP money. Okay? Any questions? Okay. Breakdown of the millage. We basically have 4 millages that we impose. The first one is a required local effort. Under the funding of the FEFP formula, there's two components. One is the FEFP, and one is required local effort. What the state does is after they determine the amount of FEFP funding, which is based on your FTE, they then back in to determine how much you will get from your local, which is your required local effort, to make those two numbers match. They determine what's paid by the local, and then what do you collect from your FTE. If your FTE goes down, generally your local goes up. Property values go up, your local goes up, and your state goes down. The amount we're going to collect this year from required local effort, based on the 3.821, is $73 million. The next millage is local capital improvement. This is the maximum that the district can levy without a vote or referendum. This is also a discretionary millage. The board can elect not to levy it. However, doing so, the district would lose $28 million in additional revenue, and your facilities, millage, your facilities, debt service, transportation, and technology programs would suffer. Your next millage is your basic discretionary local effort. The state of Florida allows districts to impose, in addition to the RLE, an additional discretionary millage of .7480. The district will receive approximately $14 million under this levy. Finally, you have the additional discretionary operating millage, our .5, what we call the DOM. I believe it was approved in August of 2016 and expires June 30th, 2021. We get approximately $9.5 million from this levy. Total would be 6.5690 total millage. Also, in your required local effort at the top, you would get a prior period funding millage adjustment. This year, that is .003. It's about $58,000. Overall, the total levies that these villages will bring in is approximately $126 million to the district. That's what you're voting on tonight. These are required for the property appraiser to put these on their trim notices that go out to the citizens.
Okay.
Good. If you noticed also, in the advertisements this year, we had a notice of a proposed tax increase. This is very similar to the notice from last year. You have to post two notices. One of them is a budget hearing, one of them is a budget increase. If your tax base and your generated revenues are expected to increase based on property values, you have to publish a tax increase. That doesn't necessarily mean that every citizen will receive an increase in their tax bill. It depends on based on their particular circumstances. This year, we generated prior year $127 million in millage. Next year is approximately $128, so you have about a 1% increase. That's why you have to post a tax increase, based upon the mathematical calculation of the maximum dollars generated. Recall, we budget at 96%. This levy is based on 100%. This is the difference between school budgeting and Department of Revenue. Property taxes. 2019-20, your property taxes increased approximately $1.1 billion. You're right now running 19.9. Last year, you're 18.7. That's the driving force of increasing your property taxes but lowering your millage rates. Questions? Good. Rollback rate. The rollback rate is the millage rate necessary on the new tax roll that will generate the same identical dollars as in the prior year. I'll say that again. The rollback rate is the millage necessary, millage rates, on the new tax roll, your new tax base, that will generate the identical dollars of the prior year. It's been the district policy, as well as most states, most cities in Jacksonville and Florida, that you state this on your agenda item. This is let the public know if your rollback rate is greater than last year. It also is an indication of approximately how much a taxpayer might see an increase in their tax bill. It's an estimate, it's not an exact. Last year, you also had a tax increase. That was approximately 1.22 was your rollback rate. So as rates go up, property taxes go up. Any questions on that? All right. My correction page. This is an indication, a little chart we do, goes in the budget book to give an indication of the average homeowner, what they might see as a result of these changes in millage rates. The top chart is an indication of the change in the millage rates, which you see that 0.224, which is about 3%. The first box chart is a homeowner that has a $170,000 home, $25,000 exemption, tax base of $175,000. That's assumed for some reason he doesn't have an increase in his property values. He would actually see a decrease in his property taxes because his value did not go up. Third one down, indication of an individual who has a 6% increase in property values but has a 3% Save Your Homes. Assuming the same trend, $175,000 tax base, he'll approximately see a 23-cent increase in his tax bill because the RLE went down, everything else went up, kind of offset each other. Last example at the bottom is an individual who has an increase in property values but doesn't have Save Your Home. He potentially would see an increase of $39 or approximately 3%. That's all I have on the millage rates.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions, or we're good? Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is, this item deals with millage rates. Dr. Moxley, have you documented that this public hearing was properly advertised in accordance with state statutes?
Yes, I have.
Okay. We now recess this meeting to conduct the public hearing as advertised. The public hearing is now in session. Dr. Moxley, are there any written responses to the advertised public hearing to be read at this time?
We have not received any.
The public is invited to address the issue at this time. Is there any individual representing an organization or his or her own personal or public interest who wishes to speak? The chair concludes that the announced public hearing on the millage rates has been conducted pursuant to notice and that ample opportunity to address the issue has been provided to all. The board meeting is reconvened at this time. Approval of resolution number 2020-03 for adoption of tentative millage rates as advertised for 6.569 mills representing required local effort, basic discretionary, additional voted millage, and capital outlay. I'm calling for a motion.
I move to approve resolution 2020-03, adopting the tentative millage rates as advertised for the 6.569 mills representing required local effort, basic discretionary, additional voted millage, and capital outlay.
Okay. Is there any, Mrs. Justice, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you to our community for continuing to support the 0.5 discretionary millage. We continue to use that to the best of our ability. As I've stated before, as a board member, I do believe that we receive money, and we are to use that money to the best of our ability to serve students, teachers, and families in our community. I believe this board is dedicated in doing that, and I will support this tonight.
Okay. Dr. Schiff? Mrs. Rosario?
No comment, thank you.
No? There be no further discussion, so we'll have a roll call.
Ms. Rosario?
Yes.
Dr. Schiff?
Yes.
Mrs. Justice?
Yes.
Mrs. Zork?
Yes.
The board has voted unanimously, 4-0.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the discussion of budget. Dr. Moxley?
Yes, at this point in time, I would like to invite Mr. Fagan back up to the podium to present a brief review of the budget highlights for the public. This is regarding the tentative budget for the 2019-2020 school year. And then we can move to the public hearing after Mr. Fagan's review.
Hello again.
Good evening, Mr. Fagan.
All right. Budget. I want to go over quick highlights regarding the state, and then we'll get into a little bit of Indian River. Overall, for the state, FTE increased about 12,000 FTE, which is about a 0.44 increase. Property values, school tax values statewide increased approximately $113 billion. So now for the state, you're up to almost $2 trillion. As we know, we were very happy this year with the base school allocation. Last year, we got a very small amount. This year, we got $75, which was almost 1.79%. Yay. Total FEFP, which is all your discretionary money and your categorical money, increased 4.2% for the state, went up $687 million, of which we get our proportionate share. So your state funding went up approximately $558 million, and your local money went up $224 million. How they spread that out. Overall, the budget was up $782 million, or approximately 3.72%. So when the state gets more money, we get more money. If you will turn to page 4 in your book, 4 of 85 or 22 of 107 in the bound.
Can you say that number again, please?
Should either be page 4 of 85, 4 of 85 in the agenda, or it would be 822 of 107. No, I'm sorry. Hang on a minute.
It's page 16 of 101.
16 of 101.
Thank you.
Next time I'll see if I can get 7 documents in front of you. Okay. For Indian River School District overall, we picked up approximately $3.5 million, or 2.71%. Our FTE went down approximately 156 on unweighted. If you look at this chart and you go down, property values up 1.1 billion, BSA, of course, the 75, add in the DCD, you're up to $79 per student. Since the state gave us more money, almost every categorical got additional money except for SAI, digital classroom, and reading allocation. And the reason that is, for SAI, our FTE went down by 156. It's based on your prior year FTE and your new FTE, so we lost because of our 156 decrease in FTE. The 457,000 for digital. In 2017-18, the legislature gave $80 million to digital. In 2018-19, they gave $70 million. In 2019, they gave $20 million. So you take $20 million, everyone gets a minimum of $250,000, and then they add the proportionate share of what's left. So when you go from 70 to 20, the district's going to have a big hit. Reading is still the $810 million, but because of a slight proportionate change, we got a decrease of $10,000 because our ranking within the overall base funding with the FEFP went down by 1%. So we took a little hit there. Questions on that?
Mr. Fagan,
Mhm.
DCD, what's that initial for?
District
Cost
cost
of-
differential.
I call it the CPI. It's a Consumer Price Index. Based upon where you are in the state of Florida, it costs more to live in Miami than it does in Baldwin, and
For the record, it's a broken equation.
that is true. That is true.
Just for an explanation, perhaps it might be considered more favorable to live by the water, so you might not, your district cost differential might be influenced by quality of living, but your cost of living might be much higher, so they might assume that someone might want to come to live here, but actually finding housing might be, it's a broken equation.
That's correct.
If Richard Corcoran's listening to that, which probably isn't, but.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. So at this time, public hearing on proposed budget. This item deals with the proposed budget. Dr. Moxley, have you documented that this public hearing was properly advertised in accordance with state statutes?
Yes, I have.
Okay. We now recess this meeting to conduct the public hearing as advertised. The public hearing now is in session. Dr. Moxley, are there any written responses to the advertised public hearing to be read at this time?
We have not received any written responses to the advertised public hearing.
No. The public is invited to address this issue at this time. Is there any individual representing an organization or his or her personal or public interest who wishes to speak? The chair concludes that the announced public hearing on the proposed budget has been conducted pursuant to notice and that ample opportunity to address this issue has been provided to all. The board meeting is reconvened at this time. So I need approval of resolution number 2020-04 for adoption of tentative budget as advertised and presented at this hearing and establish final public hearing date. I'm going to call for a motion.
I make a motion. I move to approve Resolution 2020-04, adopting the tentative budget as advertised and presented at this hearing, and that we establish the final public hearing for 5:01 p.m. on Tuesday, September 10th, 2019.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Mrs. Justice with a second. Mrs. Rosario, would you like to speak to your motion?
No, ma'am. Maybe I do. And possibly because I'm not sure that we're going to be able to get to it, but I'm glad that Mr. Fagan is on board. I didn't think that we would get here at this point for some reason. I had my reservations, but it feels good to know that everything seems to be moving smoothly. So thank you for that, and thank you, Mr. Fagan.
Mrs. Justice?
No, ma'am.
Dr. Schiff, go.
Yes, again, welcome, Mr. Fagan. Could not be more delighted you're here. Clear that you and I speak different languages, and it is incumbent on me to learn that language. This year, I know, went differently than previous years because of our sort of getting up to speed on our finance department and having a consultant and just recently getting a CFO in place. As a result of which, from my short tenure here, because I only observed last year, we haven't had the series of workshops to really dig into the budget. And in going through it, I have questions about the budget, but this isn't the, I would like us to be able to schedule some workshops so that we can dig in as a board with members of staff to ask questions and to work through this in a way less formal than sitting up on the dais, and with people who are prepared to answer those questions in an appropriate time. So on the schedule that we have in the book, I don't see a place for that. And so I'd like to request that we have some of those workshops and that we have them relatively soon. I know we have a meeting scheduled for next Tuesday. I think it's next Tuesday, August 6th. And I'm wondering if with agreement, we could look at scheduling a workshop to talk about the budget then and then move into other times, because between now and September is a long ways away. So I'm wondering if we could have a conversation now about scheduling some workshops to dig in a little deeper to the budget.
Did you have a date set coming up for a workshop on the budget?
I do not have a date set, but we can, if you want to have multiple work sessions on that, we can do that, and we can set those up. I know that we have designated on the 13th, that's a board discussion agenda meeting that day, and we had set that aside for the strategic plan at that workshop. And then you have at the end of the month, at the second business meeting day, that afternoon is a superintendent's workshop. Right now, we don't have an agenda plan for that, but if you want multiple, I would suggest we look at maybe another day, either the off Tuesday, to look at that. We can, we just put out the agenda for the 6th. If you wanted to extend that, we would need to look at how to amend that, or we can pick another day and pick some work session days if you'd like to.
Mrs. Clerk, may I? Mrs. Berenborg is not able to be with us today. She was having she had a previous engagement that she had to attend to. So I think it might be appropriate if Mrs. Esplin works with Dr. Moxley to go through our schedules to find a date that'll work for Mrs. Berenborg as well. I wouldn't be really comfortable talking about dates right now without ensuring that she could be a part of that process. While we're talking and giving thank yous, we have two other people that are sitting here, Mrs. Copeman and Mrs. Justin, and I just want to say, while Mr. Fagan, I am delighted to have you here. You have been here for a short time, but the staff of the finance department has truly seen us through. So I think we all agree, and I don't think that I'm speaking, I don't think that anyone meant to leave anyone out, but I just wanted to make sure that we said to your entire department, thank you for getting us through this. We recognize it has not been an easy process. I think this is probably going to be, this is a tentative budget. It's important to remember that there will be things that change. I expect changes, right? But that it's a good starting point, and I truly believe we're in probably the most transparent and best place that we've been in quite some time, having a real idea of our finances, where they sit, and what their flexibilities are. So that's exciting. This is an exciting budget for me to be a part of, and thank you again. To your staff.
Okay. Go ahead.
Mrs. Justice is right. I did not mean to leave anybody out. You all know my heart for you, so thank you so much for your work. I wanted to follow up on what Dr. Schiff was just mentioning. Something that I realized in this, and I don't believe that it's to the fault of anyone or except possibly the situations that we faced unique to our district, to our situation with the previous superintendent leaving and Dr. Moxley joining us. And I just want to remind the board, though you already know, I'm sure, that our district strategic plan is supposed to drive every decision our district makes. It is supposed to be the driving force for our budget. And then it is also, at that point, supposed to drive the decisions for each department and how the staff use the budget they are allotted. I think to a certain extent, we may have gone a little backwards because of the inability to have certain people in place at certain times, though we've caught up to speed. I know that we did not actively have the strategic plan open during every budget session. And maybe learning as a new board member, reflective, looking past and saying, how could we make this better? Maybe in future budget sessions, maybe next year, we should actually have that open so that we are aligning what our district strategic plan says and how we are setting our priorities for the budget, which would then therefore move to what Dr. Schiff is suggesting, having further budget workshops to now see, what's happening now, right? I suppose as a follow-up to now that we have this tentative budget in place. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. I don't want to put the cart before the horse. I want us to be able to look at the strategic plan, because I know that several of us have shared some concerns and maybe some tweaking with it, and how we, if there's anything that we need to take away or add, or, with those goals in place, I think I would suggest that we do that first, so that then we can figure out what staff is, what are the goals for staff at that point with regard to the budget. So I'm not sure how you all feel about that, but I certainly do not want to misstep. And Dr. Moxley mentioned, we have an upcoming session for the district strategic plan, and taking a look at that, a deep look at that. I just don't want us to do one thing before we do the other, because then we're going to be chasing our tails the whole year, and kind of developing a strategic plan with no goals and nothing set, at the end of the day. I suppose in summary, I do look forward to future budget workshops, but I would like us to take a look at the strategic plan first. Does that kind of make sense to you all?
It does. My preference is I'd like to get through some of the questions I have to understand some of the numbers in the book.
Right.
I think that is something we can look at. I don't know if we're too far into this budget season to really make those alignments. But I have a lot of questions about, some of the numbers, how they've fluctuated up or down. I would like to get that understanding, and then perhaps if there's a need for a second budget meeting to align the strategic plan with that. That's my thinking. I was thinking that we probably only needed one budget meeting, but hearing that, we would have to have two.
Well, I think what you're suggesting, with questions about numbers is different than what I think Dr. Schiff was suggesting. So I think if I understand what Dr. Schiff was suggesting, that you wanted to see what staff was going to do with the budget now? That's what I understood. No,
No.
you also had questions about the numbers?
Having gone through the budget book, I have specific questions about numbers and things that I'm not clear about,
Okay.
specific to the budget. I know that when we have those conversations in this setting, staff haven't always been given ample warning to be prepared to answer those questions.
Gotcha.
That's what I don't
Okay.
want to have happen now. I want to understand certain things, like Mrs. Zork was saying, about what's gone up and what's gone down and what's disappeared and what's been added. I agree with you about tying it to the strategic plan. So I think that's an important conversation. But I also agree with Mrs. Zork that there's some things that I want to understand better before even getting to that,
Gotcha.
so that I know I'm reading the budget properly, and I'm understanding some of the things that are, if not glaring, stand out to me from the budget.
I gotcha.
If I could suggest a couple things, I really hear two budget workshops. One, to get an understanding of what's in the book that's been presented to you as a tentative budget. I think that's critical for us to do sooner than later, because one, we want to make sure that we answer the questions that you have right now immediately. It also will help the staff to look at any areas of concern, because they're still tweaking it, so that when September 10th comes, we don't want any surprises. We want you to be very comfortable with where we are with the budget, and that all eyes have had a really good look at that. So I think that's first and foremost. So we can talk about a date for that. The second part is, with a strategic plan, we do have an active strategic plan. It does have goals. It is set, I think, to expire in 2022, because it was a 5-year plan. The issue that I really heard is that with a newly seated board with 3 new members, you have not had an opportunity to weigh in on that strategic plan. So what is occurring is the staff is currently using the current strategic plan to guide decisions, for schools to look at school improvement plans, everything that we're doing with the African American Achievement Plan, all those things are being used with the current plan. Now, in fairness to the newly seated board, you need to have an opportunity to weigh in because this is a new board. There's 3 new members, so as a governing board, there are things that you may want to tweak and do that. Is it a total rewrite of the strategic plan? Probably not. I mean, even as I've looked at it, there's an area that I see probably I'd like to bring forth to say, I think we do a lot in this area, but yet it's not codified as part of our strategic plan, and it's foundational to all our academic plans. So I do see that that's critically important, and so that's on the 13th. We'll bring up some of the other data, but then really take some time for the board to say, let's look at this and let's tweak these goals. Are there adjustments we need to make? Then I think we need to come back and have a second budgetary workshop where we say, okay, where does this fit? We have a priority here. Where does that fit in the current budget? If it doesn't, how do we fit that? How do we make adjustments? And that would be very appropriate to make those changes as we go into the last 2 weeks of preparing for the final budget hearing. So one suggestion might be we look at next Tuesday. We will be, I think we're here in the afternoon from 1 to probably 4 already for those proposals and the presentations that people have been invited to. Whether you want to have a discussion after that, or if you want to look at before might be a little problematic because that's the second day that we have staff here and we have a lot of different welcome backs, orientations, those kinds of things. That's why I think we put those in the afternoon. But we have the afternoon, I mean, we can do whatever you want to do with that. If you'd rather, if that's going to be a long afternoon and you want to pick a different day, we can certainly do that as well.
Go ahead, Mrs.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Zork. It's unfortunate, we had new board members join us and we didn't have a CFO here. And when I was running before I joined the board, and then once I had joined the board, I met with Mr. Morrison and staff many, many times. Ms. Justin's sitting here, she remembers me in his office quite a bit, learning about funding. The FEFP, the way that the state of Florida works in their funding and all of these different little intricacies. It may be beneficial now that Mr. Fagan has joined, for the board members that joined us that didn't have the opportunity to work directly with the CFO, to have some meetings privately with him to discuss some of the ways that the budget is built and some of the intricacies of the funding mechanism in Florida, so that when they come to these workshops, they have a better foundational knowledge. It may help us to move a little bit faster and may help them to have a better understanding of the areas in which we're working in. Because obviously, as you have mentioned, we do have quite a bit to accomplish, and everyone coming together with the same foundational knowledge would be helpful.
And certainly, Mr. Fagan is willing to sit with any board member at any point in time if you have individual questions that are specific. That option is always available for you.
Absolutely. I think we're aware of that. And this budget was, by no fault of anyone, was put out, the tentative budget was put out, I think, Friday afternoon. And I would like to, before we get to that workshop, I would like to get clarity, so I'm not utilizing the whole workshop time to, ask my questions. And then what I plan on probably bringing forth is maybe if I have a difference of opinion on why that changed or went up or down. So those are the type of issues that I would bring forward. But yes, I would like to have the opportunity to meet with Mr. Fagan over the next couple of days.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I think also, while certainly meeting with Mr. Fagan is valuable, what I don't want to do is have Mr. Fagan have to meet individually 3, 4, or 5 times to potentially answer some of the same questions. So sometimes when we do things in workshop or discussion format, I learn, not sometimes, I always learn from what other board members bring up that might be in a different way than I've thought of it. So I really value when we are all together and we can ask questions of staff together, because I learn more that way, frankly. So while individual meetings are certainly valuable, and no question I have a lot to learn, I think that's a different issue than this one.
And it was
Yeah.
meant to be a different issue. When Mr. Fagan spoke about millage rates and DCD and the different intricacies of the funding mechanism and the way that the required local effort works and all of those things, it takes time to gather a good understanding of those things and how they play into this budget. And so if there are gaps, that was my suggestion, because I do agree with you. I think it is two separate, and I do feel that I learned from my fellow board members' questions. You're absolutely right, Dr. Schiff.
Well, and frankly, I'm not having trouble catching on to, there are certain things that state requires us to do, and certain ways we have to do it locally, and there are certain things that we are just required to do. That's different than the substantive or even philosophical questions about why are we putting this money in this place for this reason? And those are, I think, the conversations that I'm missing having, and understanding in here, not some of the details of why this uses this acronym and what that means on a statewide basis, but why are we putting this money in this fund this year that wasn't there last year? Or why are we taking it away this year when it was there last year? And what implications does that have for us as a district, for the individuals that affects, and for the strategic plan? Those are the kinds of questions I want to understand, which are different than the specific, how does budget construction work?
Sure, exactly.
Would you all like to meet on the 6th, extend that meeting, or have a separate day?
No, I think I prefer having, when we're going to be coming together, that meeting should only be a couple. We have a FSBA at 1 and then Hazard and Young at 2, so probably around 4.
Right, that would be great.
Are we talking August 6th? Or
Correct.
Next week, next Tuesday.
We have a meeting at 1, from 1 to 5.
Well,
Is that
because
what
of
we're
a change in one of the schedules of one of the vendors, it's shorter. So we will be 1 to 2, 2 to
Oh, okay.
3, and then whatever discussion you have following that. So I think we'll be done by 4.
So then we would have this
do that.
discussion after
Right.
that one.
Correct.
Sure.
Sounds good.
Is it, may I? I did hear you say that the timing earlier is potentially challenging because of people coming back, but I'm wondering if people would object to doing it before those meetings rather than after. We tend to run late, and doing something like the budget after we've spent 3 or 4 hours in meetings, I personally would like to be really fresh for that conversation and do it in the morning, say 10 to 12.
May I?
Yeah.
I would prefer only on this particular date, although I prefer earlier on any other occasion, but this is the first week of school.
It's not.
No, it's not.
Isn't it?
No,
For
the week
teachers.
after.
For
it's
teachers.
Not for
Teachers.
students.
Students
yeah.
come the following week?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm getting my
Yeah.
calendars mixed
Students
up.
start the 12th.
All right,
Um,
disregard.
I could do anything from 10:30 on. We have a big staff thing at Vero Beach High School that morning till 10, so I could do it after that.
Does that present, and I mean this honestly, but does that present any kind of hardship? Is it really much easier for you to do it in the afternoon?
As long as I can do that 8 to 10 session at Vero Beach High School, I should be fine.
Okay,
Anybody else have particular?
we'll work
I
on
don't have a
that.
preference either
Yeah.
way.
So you prefer to do it before?
Personally,
I'm-
yes,
I'm
but
okay
I'm
either.
one of 4 or 5, so, I am not the only voice.
I'm okay either. Okay, do we have any further discussion on this?
No, ma'am.
All right, so roll call, Mrs. Espelin? Roll call?
Ready?
Ms. Rosario?
Yes.
Dr. Schiff?
Yes.
Mrs. Justice?
Yes.
Mrs. Zork?
Yes.
Board votes unanimously, 4-0.
Okay. Closing comments, Dr. Moxley?
Yes, at this time, I want to notify the board that our staff will notify the property appraisal of the tentative millage rates and the tentative adoptive budget. And then we will schedule the final hearing for Tuesday, September 10th at 2019 to have our final hearing on our budget.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have one other item then.
We have an add-on. The discussion, I know that Mrs. Berenberg had asked for us to discuss this tonight, for the superintendent search. She had asked that, we look at the characteristics of the superintendent that we would like to see. And then I believe that we need to come to, an agreement on various questions that we're gonna be asking. On August 6th, we do have 2 interviews with 2 of the search firms, and those interviews are set for 45 minutes each. The first one is at 1 o'clock with Florida School Board Association. The second meeting is at 2 o'clock with Hazard and Young. Unfortunately, Ray and Associates declined to come in for an interview with the board. They said that their proposal speaks for itself, so I think personally for me, that's the easy decision on that one. So at this time, I know that Mrs. Berenborg had left with Dr. Moxley a list of characteristics that she would like to see with the new superintendent. And if we want to start there, and then if there's anything that the board members, or if this is a discussion that we want to have, is this a discussion that you want to have, even with Mrs. Berenborg not here?
No, I'm not, I'd like to just state, I'm not really comfortable having this discussion without Mrs. Berenborg here. Again, we've kind of talked about the fact that all 5 of us need to come together. I know she has given comments. There may be some questions that I have, so as far as coming to some kind of consensus about questions or qualities, I'm not comfortable having that conversation right now.
What's the, our interviews are on the 6th, so what's the, another option? And Mrs. Berenborg was prepared, and she did leave a list with Dr. Moxley.
Sure, I mean, if you'd like to share, I personally, I mean, you're welcome to share Mrs. Berenborg's comments if that's what you'd like to do. We will be meeting with the 2 recruiting firms, Florida School Board Association and Hazard and Young. We had a conversation at our last workshop regarding the fact that we wanted to meet with these recruiting firms to talk with them a little bit about their process of going through and recruiting a superintendent. At this point now, I think that's where we are. If we'd like to schedule some additional time at that point to then have a conversation about the qualities that we're looking for in a superintendent, I think that would be appropriate. I don't know that the qualities change based on the group that we would be working with.
Can I ask for some clarification? Are we having a conversation about the qualities of a superintendent, or are we having a conversation about the qualities of a superintendent search firm?
Well, Mrs. Berenborg, if I'm correct, wanted to talk about the characteristics of the superintendent, and we said at the next meeting we would have that, and she left her list, and I'm just passing forward the wishes of a board member that was agreed on during a workshop, but I am in agreement with her not here. It's a very difficult to move forward with this discussion. So I'm okay with not having that discussion at this point, because we do need to really focus on what are the qualities of a search firm, and then the second step is what are the qualities of a superintendent. And that's something I feel that we will have that discussion with whatever firm that we
They're going to help
choose.
facilitate
Yes,
that conversation.
exactly.
I do believe that they
Yeah.
will help to facilitate that
Yeah.
conversation.
Okay.
And if I remember the discussion, that is part of one of the phases of that the search firm, whomever you select, will walk you through. I believe Mrs. Berenborg just said she had wanted to have that conversation with the board prior to that. With her not being here, I think she was trying to facilitate,
Right.
you know, in her absence, and she did ask for that. But I think however you choose to handle that, you will be talking about that as part of the phase of the search, when the search firm, after they're selected, is part of the process.
Right.
Can I
So
ask a question?
I'm good with that. Go ahead.
That said, would it be appropriate for us to have a conversation about qualities that we're looking for in a search form, or do we want to leave that to our own independent assessment next week when we hear from them, and then come together and talk about it after? Or do we want to have some sense prior to that meeting what we're looking, I mean, I know I have it in my own head, but that's.
I really want to hear what they have to say. I mean, I want to sit with them, I want to hear what they have to say. They're going to make a presentation, we can ask questions, I'm sure we'll learn from each other in the questions that we asked, and then we're going to have a conversation about which group we'd like to move forward with. I agree with Mrs. Zork in general that Ray and Associates not wanting to come in to have a conversation, this is the most important decision that we'll make as a board for the future of the district. And I do feel that it's appropriate for them to come and speak with us. It is a large investment of taxpayer money. So, you know, Ray and Associates, as far as I'm concerned, has just told us that they're not interested in working with us, which is fine. We want to work with a search firm that wants to work with us. But again, I do believe that any search firm we select will help to facilitate the conversation about what we're looking for in a superintendent as far as qualities are concerned, and I am looking forward to hearing what my fellow board members have to share about that in that conversation. As far as the qualities of a search firm, I'd like to hear from them before. I've never worked with a search firm that specializes in recruiting for superintendents, and I'd like to hear their presentations before I make any judgment as to what my expectations are.
May I?
Can I say one thing, and then I'll, with this being a 45-minute, this is gonna go really quickly, just like it did with our interim superintendent. My recommendation is that, what I would like to see is each board member come with 3 to 5 questions, and we try to divide that time up so that we all have an equal amount of time to ask questions, because we have to be a little bit prepared when we go into this candidate.
Well, and to be honest with you, Mrs. Zork, the other thing about that is that.
May I? Because I've been waiting for 3.
Well, I'll allow her to follow up on
I
that.
apologize. The other thing I was going to say was, you know, FSBA is coming to us as one of the vendors. They'd like to participate and help us to search for a superintendent, but we all are members now. And they do facilitate school boards through this process, whether you work with them as the group that's doing the recruiting or not. So it was just a suggestion that as Dr. Schiff has mentioned many times before, the FSBA has been really forthcoming with information. And I'm sure if any board member wanted to know about superintendent search firms working with them, that they would be able to share information, or they would be able to direct you to other board members across the state that have done searches recently or in the process of doing a search, that you could get some information from them. That was all I wanted to share with you.
Okay. Mrs. Rosario?
Thank you. As far as a superintendent search, I would like to duplicate Dr. Moxley. Those are my qualifications. The same qualifications that I had before, or the same expectations that I had before Dr. Moxley came on board, are the same ones that I am expecting for a superintendent moving forward. That's simple. With regard to a search firm, I am looking for someone who has a clear vision, or who understands our vision, and/or can help us create a united vision and mission moving forward in the search for superintendent. I would like to see someone who has a good response to us. I think the FSBA did a great job facilitating our search for the interim superintendent in ways that, speaking for myself, I was pretty shocked at how quick and easy the facilitation was on their part, and the organization of all of the checklists and the timelines and the, searching and all that other kind of stuff that I did not realize that we really needed to do. It was very helpful. So I think in my head, I'm kind of looking for that same kind of quality. I'm also looking at price, and I also want to look at timeline, the timeline of recruitment. What timeline are they going to give us in terms of recommendation? I mean, ultimately, it's our final word, and we could give them our timeline, and they can put it together. But do they have proposed timelines? Do they have experience and skills in searching for a superintendent? Have they done it before? Have they not? What is their history in this particular area? Because I don't want to get caught up with a firm that will make this process much more complicated for us than it should be.
Okay. So 45 minutes each, is that correct?
Yes, we gave, there's an hour between each one, so you have a 15-minute window in there, so their presentation is supposed to be, we gave 45 minutes
Okay.
for that,
So
allotted to that.
when you, because I've not been a part of that, and that's
Right.
fine, I just
Right.
need to understand.
Right.
So when you called the firms, you said you have 45 minutes to present to the board, and then they're going to be coming with a PowerPoint?
I believe most of them will come with a
Okay.
PowerPoint, and most of the time, they'll be ongoing. They will
Okay.
present their information. You will be able to ask questions
Okay,
along there. And we
perfect.
gave a
That-
15-minute buffer in there.
Okay, perfect.
Mhm.
That's, then that saves us from having to try to come up with questions
Right.
currently, and then, and have the format.
I believe the presentation will create situations or opportunities for
Yes,
you to ask
absolutely.
questions along the way, because they'll be pretty comprehensive in their
Okay,
presentation
perfect.
and walk you through.
No, I'm happy that that's how we presented
Yeah.
it, is to have them do a presentation to us.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. Yes, you're not, it's not like an interview where you would sit down and they would come in and wait to be asked questions. They will present give a presentation.
Okay, I
And
appreciate that.
both organizations, they're very well-versed in doing superintendent searches. So, yes. And I do want to make sure that I clarify that when we contacted Ray and Associates, they declined. They thanked us for the opportunity to present. They declined. They did not give a reason as to why, but that they would not be able to present on that date. So therefore,
Okay,
the only consideration you would have would be their or their proposal.
okay.
Mhm.
Thank
I'm
you.
not sure whether they
So
had
they
other
may-
conflicts, but
Okay.
they did not give us a reason.
Okay.
But the only thing you have to base, I mean, you can still consider them, but
Mhm.
it's only based on their proposal. Mhm.
Yeah,
They
that
offer
was
to
it.
come
I
in
was
and-
just going to say that my understanding of that was exactly what Dr. Moxley just mentioned,
Right.
in that they just couldn't be here present, that they
We
weren't
do not
either
know why.
interested or they couldn't come for some other reason present that day for the interview or for the presentation, but that we still have their proposal, their written proposal.
Correct.
Lovely. Mrs. Zork, may I ask a question? Dr. Moxley, would they be available to come in a different time?
We did not ask that question, nor did they ask for a different day and time.
Okay.
So if that's something you'd want to follow up, that certainly would be something.
Yes, I personally would.
Then we'd need to set another date and, how you want to do that. Usually, the board sets the day and time when they're coming, and they have staff that they can send. So I'm not sure the reason for, whether they have, I don't know the answer to that.
Here's-
I did not speak with them personally.
Here's my thought about that. I think that a firm in this particular situation, such as this, might offer or suggest, hey, I'm not available on that day. Just so happens that all of our consultants are not available on that day. Everybody has presentations somewhere else. However, we're very interested. Might the board consider another date for us to come in and offer a workshop or offer our presentation in person? That's something different for us to consider. Because then we know that they're still interested, there was just a conflict on the calendar for some reason. But to not offer any reason and to say no, just like that, does not give me the feeling that they might really be willing to do the job. So I'm not interested in calling them. come
I
back
can't
or
speak
to-
to the amount
yeah.
of work that is out there. I know there are a lot of superintendent searches
Yeah.
that happen all over the United States, so I don't know the volume of that, so I can't speak to that. I was not given a reason. It was communicated that they declined to be able to come on the 6th. So I don't want to read into
Yeah.
that they're not interested, or they are, or that was just a date they couldn't come. The only other thing, if you are really interested in hearing from them, rather than to delay, because we did put that chunk of time there, if you want to look at Zooming, doing a Zoom kind of virtual,
Yeah,
you know, that would be, you know, the only other thing I could say. Or you may say, you know, this was our day, that's their business. You know, if they couldn't accommodate, they don't accommodate, so.
My comment to this is, and here we are just speculating what
Right.
they're thinking, and I don't like really doing that, but I'm just trying to think through this. You know, we did offer it to them, they didn't withdraw. It's basically, here's our proposal, and they did not offer any other, you know, suggestions of coming in. To me, I'm getting a sense just from that they're too busy for us. And we need someone that's dedicated to us, because like Mrs. Justice said, this is one of the most important decisions us as a board we will be making. And if they're not dedicated to at least, trying to work with us on a date, you know, it
Well, I
gives
mean, we
me
could give them-
reservations on how they'll be working with us in the future.
So in the effort to not speculate or assume anything, perhaps we should just reach out. I think, you know, in making this decision, it's nice to have three, because we are, you know, beholden to the taxpayers. We're gonna be spending a large amount of taxpayer money. I think it would probably be nice to reach out to them again and say, we're a little confused. Was this data conflict, or are you, or do you not come and do presentations? A presentation is something that we've seen as a commitment from them to come. It shows interest, and as a board, we've liked that, right? So perhaps we could just get some clarification on that.
Okay, well, I agree. Let's just get clarification and not guesstimate on what's going on with them.
I have no problem doing that. It's fine. You know, it's fine. That said, and I wouldn't otherwise have said this at this meeting, but because of this conversation, I am gonna say it. In anticipating that this conversation was gonna happen last week, even though I wasn't here, I had intentions of actually calling in, if I could, for that conversation. So I reviewed all of the proposals. I'm sorry, my back is to you.
No,
I reviewed all of the proposals, and I have to say, in reviewing them, of the three, I was least impressed with theirs. I thought aspects of the proposal were kind of sloppy. I thought that there were things that they left out of the timeline and of the presentation in comparison to the other two. So that was just my first read on it, but given the first read, of course I'm happy to see them.
Right.
I'm happy to see them. But my first read was, I think this is not my first choice, but maybe they're great in person. But now my second read is, this is interesting. We offered them to come in and see us. They've elected not to do this. They haven't said, but we'd love to Zoom in. Could we arrange for that? We'd love to come on another day. Could we arrange for that? If I were interviewing for a job, that's what I would say.
Yeah.
So to me now, there are two things that give me pause. I've learned to trust my instincts, frankly. And my instincts right now are, I have no problem doing it. I have no problem inviting them in. When I am looking to hire somebody for a job, if I am interviewing for a job, it's incumbent on me to make myself available for that job. It's incumbent on me to make myself attractive to that hiring authority. It's incumbent on me to do the work to make me look really good. This is not that. This is us reaching out to say, hey, could you look a little better?
Right.
Hey, could you, we're a little confused here. We'd like to give you the opportunity to explain. If we want to do it, we can do it. I certainly don't object. But I'm left right now with two sets of proposals that on first glance looked better, and now on second glance, still look better.
I'd
So-
always like to choose from 3 than 2, that's my point, just in general.
Okay,
If
so let's get through August 6th, let's get through those, and just reach out to them, get clarification, and if on Tuesday we decide, absolutely, we know for sure this is who we want, there's no need to even call them to come in for a second, or for a first interview.
Okay.
It's my opinion.
Good plan.
So just to summarize, we're going to call tomorrow and find out the rationale why they declined, whether
Right.
it was a date
Oh,
conflict,
Or
I thought we weren't gonna do
miscommunication.
that. I thought you were saying, let's get through the
After
6th
Tuesday.
and then.
oh, not call them at
No,
all?
I didn't,
Oh,
no.
okay.
I would like to have that answer when we come back on the 6th of rationale. Was there just miscommunications in the email? And,
Perhaps they say we didn't feel like it was necessary, in which case we'll say, well, then we don't really want to work with you. You don't hold the same values. We don't have the same values, shared values.
This was done all by telephone calls.
oh, it
Yeah,
was,
so,
I
okay,
mean-
Yes,
okay. So it wasn't email,
it was not email.
Okay.
okay.
I think it's a good plan, Mrs. Ork.
So, you're shaking your head. I don't know what the problem is.
I'm not, I could shake my head.
No,
I'm just
you're
not
just over
interested.
here.
You have your own opinion, I have mine. I'm just not interested. I don't think that we should be chasing someone for a job interview. If they were originally interested, they should show 100% on their part that they are willing to do anything and everything. And in that response, say, like I said, excuse me, unfortunately, I'm not available on that day, but please, we are interested. What else can we do, is there another day? I mean, that certainly would be a message that wouldn't be misinterpreted.
Well, I'm gonna give benefit of the doubt, whoever answered the phone probably was not the right person who should have been answering the phone. And I'm ready to get clarification if it's fact or if I'm wrong in this. But, it is always better to have three. And,
Or not.
we'll know,
Sometimes you know.
you know what, we'll know on,
That's fine.
we will know on Tuesday if we wanna even venture there. We will know on Tuesday if we wanna send it out and keep looking beyond this third one.
Yeah, there's so many
Yeah.
other
So,
recruitments. I mean, there-
I really feel like of the two that we're gonna interview on Tuesday, I feel that it's probably gonna be one of them, but, I'm not guaranteeing that. I'm not gonna put
I
all
also
my,
don't want us to rush our decision as, in this either. I know that we need to get started in the search, but I don't want us to feel on Tuesday that our hands are tied
No.
and that we have to jump to choose these two or one of these three, or, there are thousands of other recruiting firms out there.
yes.
There are, but we do need to start moving forward
Yes,
in this
absolutely.
process.
exactly what I just
So I agree with you, Mrs. Rosario. I'm not rushing this. I just, we'll know Tuesday if we like either one of the two and if we want to move forward with keep looking. So I think that's where we are right now. So I look forward to that conversation on Tuesday.
Me too.
At this time, typically I have the superintendent closing, but that's not on here. Did you have anything that you wanted to say?
No, I thank you very much
Okay.
for working with us on the budget tonight. I think we're at a good place. There's still work to be done, and I think I appreciate your patience with all of us getting caught up to speed. I think, again, we're moving forward in a good direction, and I appreciate the time to have some additional workshops.
All right, thank you. At this time, we're going to adjourn the meeting at 6:19.